Good afternoon, everyone. We're a little late. It's 15:37. That's the time that we use in the Veterans Committee. And we don't have a quorum yet. I think we're one short, but we're going to start as a subcommittee. I don't want anybody waiting around unless there's any objections from the committee members. And as soon as we grab one more person, we'll establish a quorum, and then we'll go on. Oh, here we go. Thank you very, very much. We do now, so we will call the quorum. And I officially open this meeting. Go ahead.
Cook.
Here.
Salas. Block. DeVore. Gilmore. Lou. Perez. Saldana. Yamada.
All right, we have a quorum. We have, today we have one bill that we're going to hear testimony on. That's AB 2309 by Assembly Members Fletcher. Also, we have two members on consent. Right now, since we have a quorum, let's do the consent calendar. That's AB 2365 and ACR 158. Do I have a motion and second on the consent calendar?
So move.
We have a motion and a second. Could we call the roll, please?
Cook.
Aye.
Cook, aye. Salas. Block. DeVore.
Aye.
Block, aye. DeVore. Gilmore. Aye. Gilmore, aye. Lou. Perez.
Aye.
Perez, aye. Saldana. Saldana, aye. Yamada. Yamada, aye.
Okay, before we call Assemblyman Fletcher, I just want to let you know what's going on. We're obviously going to do the Veterans Committee first. We have one bill which we're going to hear. And then the second part of the agenda, we are very honored to have a co-chair with us today, Chairman Perez, for the Assembly Committee on Jobs, Economic Development, and Economy. So we're going to hear the first one, and then, as I said, we'll adjourn our meeting and then go on to the joint oversight hearing on Operation Welcome Home and other workforce programs. So right now, Assemblyman Fletcher, if you will present on your bill, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Assembly Bill 2309 will rename the Chula Vista Veterans Home after one of San Diego's most dedicated veterans, John Smith. John Smith was a tireless advocate for veterans. He was a Vietnam vet who was wounded in Vietnam, and upon returning, pretty much dedicated the rest of his life to service to veterans, veterans groups, and veterans causes. When I came back from Iraq, he was one of the first veterans I met who was active in advocating on behalf of our community. I sat next to him on a commission we were on for years, and can tell you I've never seen anyone who was more committed and more dedicated every single day, day in and day out. He was one of the first employees of the Chula Vista Veterans Home, worked there every single day. He founded Stand Down, was one of the founders of Veterans Village of San Diego, started the first Stand Down to help veterans advocates, and we could go on and on and on. And I think a lot of us from San Diego who knew John and worked with him feel it's a fitting and appropriate testament to his legacy and to who he was to rename the place that meant so much, the John Smith Memorial Veterans Home. Thank you. I'd like to thank all of our co-authors from San Diego, Assemblyman Block and Salas and Jeffries and Harkey and others, and would respectfully request an aye vote. And I'm happy to take the committee's technical amendments.
Okay. Do you have any witnesses in support?
I think it's just me, Colonel.
Just you? You
Yes.
could be in jeopardy here. Do we have any witnesses in opposition? Okay. Seeing none, comments, questions by members of the panel? Yes, sir.
Mr. Fletcher, first of all, just thank you for your continuous work on behalf of veterans and your commitment. Obviously, you were in the military, and rightly so that you bring up and deal with these issues and these type of bills that are very, very important to our veterans. So I just want to say thank you for your continued work on this. And although I'm not from San Diego, I'd love to be a co-author as well.
Well, that'd be wonderful. We'd love to have us, the more the merrier. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Got to push the right button. We have a motion and a second. Could we have a roll call vote, please?
Motion is due pass as amended. Cook.
Aye.
Cook, aye. Salas. Block. Block, aye. DeVore. Gilmore. Gilmore, aye. Lou. Perez.
Aye.
Perez, aye. Saldana. Saldana, aye. Yamada. Yamada, aye.
Congratulations. Your bill is out. Good job.
Thank you, Colonel.
Thank you very much. Okay, now we're going to adjourn. I'm sorry? Okay. Can we adjourn? All right. We're not going to adjourn because we're going to leave the roll open for a couple of minutes, but we're going to do that serendipitously. That's a pretty good word on a late afternoon. And so we'll start the other committee hearing right off the bat. Before I start, I wanted to ask Chairperson Perez to see if he wanted to make any opening comments or make any remarks about today.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Chairman Cook. As the Chairman for Jobs, Economic Development, and the Economy, I want to also welcome everyone to the joint committee hearing of the Assembly Veteran Affairs Committee and the Assembly Committee on Jobs, Economic Development, and the Economy. We do have a couple of members. Well, actually, we have two members here, Mr. Marty Block as well as Mr. Dan Logue, that also represent the Committee on Jobs, and I want to thank them for being here as well for this important hearing. As Mr. Cook has said, today's hearing will examine the current challenges facing California veterans in accessing employment and training opportunities. This is actually the third hearing that the Assembly Jobs Committee has held regarding veterans, workforce, and job training issues. The committee has also sponsored legislation AB 1378, the Workforce Development and Accountability Act, to address some of the challenges we have identified during our work on this issue. During the previous hearings, we heard from veterans, nonprofit organizations who serve veterans, and state and local government workforce development professionals responsible for administering public money targeted to serve veterans. Excuse me. What we discovered is that while there are never enough resources, perhaps our biggest challenge is to work more productively with the existing resources and to ensure that our veterans are receiving every possible assistance in areas such as healthcare, housing, education, and workforce and job training assistance. We also observed that there is a significant lack of coordination by the California Department of Veteran Affairs and the Employment Development Department that leave individual state program staff and local organizations working separately and in isolation. California has the largest number of veterans and receives $18 million annually to help veterans find jobs through one-stop centers. California, however, ranks 48th of all the states in helping veterans obtain jobs. To address the problem of veteran unemployment, the legislature needs better information on what is happening in real time. And to this end, the Jobs and the Veterans Committee staff prepared a white paper for the joint hearing held on March 2nd, 2010, and are again using for this hearing. The paper provides background about veterans in California, as well as identifying 9 key federally funded veteran workforce development programs which are administered through the state. I would like members to turn to page 21 on the white paper. This is it here. If you turn to page 21 on the white paper, there you will see a short description along with the individual funding amount for each workforce program. As part of the paper, staff also developed an assessment tool called the Veteran Workforce Development Report Card, which is on page 28. But what I wanted to highlight on page 21 is the fact that for fiscal year 2009-2010, there was an amount of $56,690,300 that were allocated for our veterans. Yet at the same time, the concern that we have is that veterans coming from Iraq and veterans coming from Afghanistan serving there, our unemployment rate for them is at 15.2%, while the statewide average is at 12.2%. So that's definitely something of concern for all of us. And if you please turn to page 28 on the white paper, there you'll find a copy, and it is my understanding that the Employment Development Department filled out this document, and it will be used as part of our discussion later today. This is a report card, and by using this report card format, the committee will have a better opportunity to understand how Operation Welcome Home fits within the existing structure of California's Veterans Workforce Development Programs, and whether or not, as a program in and of itself, Operation Welcome Home is properly structured. Let me end by thanking those that are going to be speaking before the committee. I look forward to working with you to make sure our veterans have access to the benefits they deserve, and what they deserve is a job that is befitting the sacrifice they have made for our great state and our great country. And with that, I'd like to turn it back over to our chairman, Mr. Cook.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to make a couple of brief comments. I think by now everyone realizes that I think this is the most bipartisan committee that we have in the building. Senate might not like that comment, but I said it anyway. And I think it's because we stay focused on the issue. We don't, and we're going to continue that tenor. So today, obviously, this is about veterans. We're talking about welcome home veterans. We're talking about what we can do. So the bottom line is to get something done, solutions, and keeping with that, I certainly appreciate you co-chairing this today, and hopefully we can get some insight to cut through some of this red tape and things that, and we can get these young men and women to work and back into our society. So that's the goal, and that's what we're going to try and do today. So I'm going to start it off, and I'm going to call the here first, California Department of Veterans Affairs, and I have Colonel Rocky Chavez, Deputy Secretary, California Department of Veterans Affairs. And I won't make any comment about how the Marines are taking over this committee, but that's it.
Mr. Chairman, I thought you were going to give us an opportunity.
Oh, I'm sorry. You want to start right at the beginning?
Just going off the agenda, I thought we would give ours a chance to present some points that we wanted to cover.
Absolutely. Do you want to start?
I have some points I'd like to bring forward, and I hope you can focus on some of these issues as you go through your presentations. Because in the report on page 4, it mentions how women veterans have fared worse than veterans in general, and their unemployment rate is higher than male veterans, almost doubling, in fact, during one of the time periods outlined here. And yet when I look through the proposals, I don't see any specific recommendations or programs that are geared to assist women veterans. And as the Women's Caucus and Senator Wolk, who helped spearhead some of the reports that are referenced in the appendix here as shown, women veterans face a very unique challenge when they come back. They are, for the first time, participating in combat in a way that has not been seen in prior conflicts in this country. They are coming back with higher rates of some PTSD and other issues that compared to their male counterparts. They are, according to this report, experiencing higher rates of unemployment. And so given that, I would like, as part of your discussion, if you could explore some ways that women veterans who often are also dealing with reintegrating back into parenting and family responsibilities can have some additional support. And Mr. Chavez, you come from Oceanside, I believe. You were on the city council there, very high Marine population up in the northern part of San Diego County, or the southern part of Orange County, I guess, depending on how you look at it. So you know that there are many issues, domestic issues, that affect men and women veterans when they come back. But those are family issues that I think I want to make sure are being addressed as part of this, because what we ultimately want is that families are getting the support from their parents of these as they transition out of active duty military. And certainly down in Southern California and in San Diego, we have a huge number of families that want their mothers and their fathers to be successful in their post-military life. So if you could, as you go through your presentations, give some thought to those concerns that I've raised, I would appreciate that very much.
Thank you. Other members of the panel have specific items they want to address, or do you want to listen to the testimony and then that might prompt certain questions or discussion items? Is that okay? All right, then we'll start off. Please identify yourself. And Colonel, you're up.
Thank you. My name's Rocky Chavez. I'm the Undersecretary for California Department of Veteran Affairs, and I'd like to thank both committees for allowing us to have the opportunity to discuss Operation Welcome Home. This is not in my prepared comments, but just listening to the discussion now, I'd also like to thank Chairman Perez, Assemblymember Saldana for asking both those questions, in particular the use of resources. You know, there are significant resources, sir, going into this, and we should be held accountable, and that's a very good question. And Assemblymember Saldana, women's issues are very near and dear to my heart. Having sat on the Women's Resource Center in Oceanside, dealt with domestic violence for a number of years. It's an important area, and as you know, women are rising in their numbers as in the military. And you're exactly right on unemployment and PTSD. And later on, my deputy will be talking about something we're starting to see, which is really a tragedy, I think, in this country. And so now we're seeing, because of the divorce rate, women veterans who are suffering from PTSD as a single parent with children, and that's a real tragedy, and we are looking at putting resources in that one particular area. It's a small population, but it's a very important population, something dear to me, so thank you for bringing that up. Now my prepared comments. Operation Welcome Home is designed to connect veterans returning to California to the services and benefits they have earned. Simply put, the governor wants to thank California citizens for serving our country. Operation Welcome Home had some stated objectives, and it's very simple. There's 3 of them. Identify the returning veterans to our state, contact these veterans no less than 3 times, and inform returning veterans of their benefits and services. Now, there have been many thousands of hours of discussion on how to accomplish these objectives of welcoming veterans. We have chose to partner with federal, state, local, and I would like to stress here, nonprofit associations. We see this mission of welcoming veterans as a noble endeavor, as does all of our partners, to ensure that each veteran is contacted and they are provided the resources to allow them to live the American dream, for which they have fought for in a hostile environment. This is the objective of Operation Welcome Home. As we all know, California is a very large state, and the challenge of contacting approximately 30,000 veterans who are returning each year is a daunting task. However, we have not shirked from the enormity of this task, but have aggressively addressed the challenge. To help us communicate and better manage the resources our partners bring to the operation, we have divided the state into 9 regions. Each of these regions is unique. Where they may be common in concept, they are not common in resources. Contacting veterans in rural northeastern California is not the same as contacting veterans in Los Angeles. As of now, after less than 2 months of full operation, we are projected to contact approximately 24,000 of these 30,000 veterans within the first year of the operation. Although 24,000 is a significant accomplishment, it is not enough. Even now, we are looking at ways to improve our outreach. I've had the opportunity to see a list of possible questions for this discussion, and I agree with the questions. We, CDVA, need to be held accountable for the spending of taxpayers' resources. Additionally, we also need to recognize that 24,000 is not 30,000. We need to contact the other 6,000 recently returning veterans. However, it is too early for us to give a full and accurate accounting of Operation Welcome Home. As mentioned earlier, we are still defining and improving our process. Process improvement is continuous. And I like to stress here in particular areas of women as we go out and meet more of the community, single mother women returning is a deep concern of mine. As we all debate budget for the upcoming year, the resources to be provided to veterans needs to be discussed. For this reason, I welcome the line of questionings because they need to be established. Your leadership and input is needed if Operation Welcome Home is to be successful. We need to hear your concern and address them so that you can understand and support this operation. I have my 2 deputies here, and they'll discuss the details of the operation, and they'll discuss the questions you have addressed, Mr. Perez and Ms. Saldana. The California Department of Veterans Affairs is honored to be the advocate for the California veterans and sees the goals established by the governor and Operation Welcome Home as noble, needed, and timely. Thank you for allowing me to make my opening comments. There's nothing more dear to me personally, and I know in our staff, than taking care of veterans and their families. Thank you.
Thank you.
Little musical chairs. Mr. Chair, members, J.P. Trombley with the California Department of Veterans Affairs. I don't have a prepared statement here. We have here Deputy Secretary Ted Puntillo from our Veteran Services Division and myself to answer questions specific to the implementation of Operation Welcome Home and how we are partnering with other agencies within state government to implement this program. One point of clarification that I do want to make here is that Operation Welcome Home is not a new program per se. What it is it is an umbrella operation that is bringing together existing resources and existing personnel and efforts to try and deliver those services more directly and more effectively to our veterans and get the information to our veterans in the community. So it's not that we're creating anything new per se, that what we are doing is approaching this in a new way, in a more effective way, to deliver those services and get the information to our veterans. And with that, I don't know if Ted, if you'd like to.
Well, not to disagree with my fellow deputy here, I think we do have some new initiatives that we have sort of brought out in the last year. I sat here about a year ago when I first got this job, and I listened to the same committee, and they talked about a couple things. They talked about the TAP process, Transitional Assistance Program, that happens at the end of most people's military tour, and how somehow that needs to be improved. And we talked about outreach. How are we outreaching to these new veterans that are getting out of the service? So we went back to our agency and put on our thinking cap, and we said, well, there's 24 sites in California where people are discharged. That could be a good place to start. So we started there. We partnered with EDD, and that's something that was sort of not happening several years ago, was a partnership between 2 state agencies to help veterans, especially EDD and CDVA. We got into the TAP process, and we realized that these people were given this 2 or 3 day class. They walk out the door, hand their discharge, and they go into the society. They go home. Then we spend tens of millions of dollars to do outreach events to try to connect back with them, to make sure that they know about their benefits. So we decided to shortcut that and get their contact information at that class, so that when they got out, we would actually reach out to them initially through the County Veteran Service Office, through the VA, and through our own agency. And we did that fairly successfully. the governor's office liked that idea and wanted to sort of put it on steroids. No pun intended with Arnold and everything, and he did. He pumped $20 million into of money that came from the stimulus fund for unemployment insurance, and we hired 325 veterans, I think they're almost all on board now, to act on this information and actually go out and make physical contact with these veterans when they come out. And those of us who have been in the military, I ask this question on all these presentations that I make. I ask how many people were contacted after they got out of the service and asked how they were doing? Nobody. How many people are being contacted in any other state right now when they get out of the service and asked how they're doing? Nobody. We're the only state that is doing this. We're cutting edge. We're reaching out to using EDD as a partner to actually contact these people and ask them, how you doing? And we're getting weekly results. We get a report every Wednesday, how many people were contacted and the results of that contact. We have a laundry list of questions that we ask them, and they are mostly centered around employment, and we get a lot of good information there. Some of these people don't pay attention in this class. They don't know when they get out they're eligible for unemployment insurance. They don't know there's a whole army of people out there to help them get jobs. So we're contacting them, letting them know about this. We ask them if they're having any mental health, any physical health problems. We refer them to the VA, make sure they're getting into their free health insurance. We ask them about family problems, physical problems, housing problems, and we record that information. It gets reported back to us. And then after 30 days, we reach out to them again, these same people, and we ask them how they're doing. And if they said, nah, I need health insurance or health care through the VA, 30 days later, we're asking them, did you sign up for health care? You were on unemployment insurance. We ask them 30 days later, are you now doing that? And we ask them again at 60 days, and then we follow up at 180 days. So this is a very comprehensive outreach to these people who are just getting out of the service. We also reach out to people who fill out our integration form that maybe just didn't get out of the service but are interested in employment. We reach out to them too. They could have been World War II vets. If they check employment on our box, we will reach out to them. So it is new, it is cutting edge, and I think we're setting the bar very high for our country as to outreach for our veterans. The bottom end of this is that we have formed 9 collaboratives using existing resources. As JP said, the services that are out there, the biggest barrier to services for our service people are lack of knowledge of those services. They don't know they exist, they don't know they're eligible for them, and they don't know how to access them. These collaborative organizations that we have throughout the state organize these services, get them documented, up and talking to each other. We meet with them, and we meet with them regularly and organize them and let these EDD CalVet Corps people know that these services exist in their area so they can refer them to the services that they need. So basically, in a nutshell, that's what we're doing. It is new, it is exciting, and we're setting the bar very high for the rest of the country.
Well, I want to thank you for the testimony. By the way, JP, they spelled your name wrong. First of all, Ted, I want to compliment you. You came into my office, and we're asking questions about my military service and actually talking about many of the benefits that I didn't realize that, and I've heard this from other people. I think you do an outstanding job. And you didn't ask about the mental problems I had. I think you just assumed that because I work in the state
I
capitol,
knew better than
that goes with. I had some real questions because I am very, very concerned about the word getting out to the veterans, and this has been a big problem. And the question is from somebody that you've heard this before. I was born in Jurassic Park. I don't understand computers and the internet, and I have problems with it. I don't know how to turn it. But the younger generation, this is what they live for. They are the new age, and I want to just at least get some insight into how we are communicating through cyberspace in terms of programs that are available, once again, explaining their benefits, making sure that it's simple, and ways that they can interact and ask questions, whether we have Facebooks and one of the questions I do want you to ask is how many hits we have on the programs that you have, whether you are tracking that, because that's one of the ways I think that all of us here kind of see whether we're getting our message out to our constituents, and that's one of the ways we get feedback. So if you could kind of address those issues a little.
Okay, when somebody gets into our reintegration system, immediately after 30 seconds after that information is put in, and you can go online and put your own information in, within 30 seconds, your email address will receive information from our agency. And we have several boxes on our form. If you want to know about Agent Orange, if you want to know about mental health, if you want to know about housing, employment, you check the box. Within 30 seconds, you receive an email from us with electronic information packages about that topic that you're interested in. We also send you an electronic welcome home letter from the governor introducing you to our county veteran service office. We also send you a snail mail letter from the governor and the secretary to your physical address, advising you of your benefits. As far as electronics, we also connect you with our website, and we send you, every month you would get a newsletter from our agency telling you what's new in the VA. And it includes how to get onto our Facebook, our Twitter, and our MySpace, which we have set up and running. So we tried to cover all the electronic and E-type communications that are out there with the veterans. Every month, if you sign up with our system, you will get a newsletter from us with new and exciting news, what's happening in the world of VA and employment.
Mr. Chair, if I could expand a little bit on that. The Facebook, we do have not only a departmental website, but we've also established a general veterans website, as we call it, veterans.ca.gov. That is the website for Operation Welcome Home. Both those websites have a presence on Facebook, on MySpace, and on Twitter. We've also utilized advertising on Facebook and MySpace. Facebook was not as, we're looking at the effectiveness of it. MySpace seems to have been the one that seems to have gotten the most hits back. I can get you the reports on some of the hits that we've had for the ads. We ran an ad just off the top of my head. We were capped out every day, allowing us to hit 90 hits a day on the ad. They charge each time that you get a hit, and we capped out every day of the past month that we had it up there. So we are tracking those. We also have tracks for our departmental website and the veterans website, and I can get that information to you.
Okay, I don't want to get ahead of myself too much, but how about resume preparation and advice, you know, where they can take advantage of some of the training? And a lot of these veterans don't realize that the schools they went to, that can be applicable to the civilian workforce.
When we
I don't mean to get too far ahead.
When we go out and meet with these veterans, so far we have approximately, we just started this a month ago, we have 6,705 veterans in our system queued ready for interviews. In the last 2 weeks, or last 4 weeks, we've interviewed 407 of them. And job training, out of the 407, 166 wanted employment information. They were referred to the EDD One Stop. 28 wanted job training information. They were also referred to the EDD One Stop. And 132 of them wanted IU benefits. So out of the 400 that we interviewed, UI, I'm sorry, unemployment insurance.
Okay.
And so we're tracking that on a weekly basis. Sorry, I get my acronyms mixed up. But and out of the 407 people that we've interviewed in the last couple weeks, only 119 of them said, you know, I'm good to go, I'm fine. 10% of them wanted information on TBI and PTSD issues. So that's pretty profound to have 10% of this population admitting to a total stranger that they have mental health issues and that they want referral for that.
Yeah. Do we also throw in there the incentives that they have that they might not, in terms of education and job preference, and things like that?
Every person that we meet, we give them our total resource guide, and it tells them exactly everything they needed to know about the GI Bill, the 9/11 GI Bill, college fee waiver, and other educational, OJT apprenticeship, and anything about education that they'd want to know.
Okay, thank you.
And then women's issues, we definitely target women as a special population when we're doing these forms. And we don't ask their sex, but we can usually tell from their name whether they're a female or not. And we automatically refer them to our Deputy Secretary, Barbara Ward, who personally contacts each one of these women and she's established a register, and she personally contacts them and sends them a monthly newsletter about all the benefits and services that are available for them. And I know on a daily basis she's calling numerous of them who indicate that they're having problems with military sexual trauma, PTSD, child care, and the like. The other part of that is we have outreach to Guard and Reserve, who is a major component of our state, and we're working closely with the Military One Source and Family Readiness and our ISFAC, which is the Inter-Service Family Action Committee, to address needs of families and women. So they're all part of our collaborative operation, where we've identified the services that help families and women especially, and they're channeled right into those services. So if we are aware of some female or family situation that needs to be addressed, we automatically refer them to these services.
You mentioned the Guard and Reserve. Obviously, that's also an employment or reemployment venue. And
they seem to have bigger problems than the people getting out because they're back and forth.
Okay. All right. I just want to make sure that everyone is added on. So I will officially adjourn the Veterans meeting, and we'll continue the hearing. Yes, sir.
Okay. At 180 days, our agency is taking over the task of reaching out to these people again and making sure all of their needs are addressed. So this is a long-term commitment to follow up to make sure that their needs are met.
Thank you. What I'd like to do right now is turn the meeting over to my coach. Excuse me. Okay. We have to officially announce the vote from our pending business. So, Eric.
AB 2309, DeVore, aye. AB 2365, DeVore, aye. ACR 158, DeVore, aye.
Okay. Then I guess we can officially adjourn that meeting. And now, so I can finish another meeting, I would ask my co-chair to take over while I go add on. And thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you, Mr. Cook, Chairman Cook. I want to welcome Mr. Berryhill as well from our Jobs Committee to our joint hearing. Thanks for coming as well, Mr. Berryhill. Corporal Eric Martinez from our small little town of Coachella, which is where I'm from and where he's from, is about to move back home after serving 4 years in the United States Marine Corps. Currently, he is stationed in San Diego in Camp Pendleton. I did have a chance to see him this weekend. He told me that he only has a month left, and then he'll be coming back home. And I'm very, very excited and very happy to know that he is coming home. And when he was younger, 4 years ago, he was considered an at-risk youth. He was in and out of many challenges, but regardless of all that, he knew what he wanted to do. He knew that he wanted to go into the military, and he wanted to carry on that tradition proud, with honor, because his parents and grandparents were also part of the military. And so I'm just very happy that he served, and now he's coming back home, knowing as well that he also fought in Iraq. Now, when he did come home over this weekend, we had about an hour to just say hello to one another. And I will say that he started talking to me about things that I didn't expect him to talk to me about, which I was also very delighted to hear, which was he started talking to me about the fact that he wanted a letter of recommendation. He started talking to me about the fact that if I knew of folks that perhaps would be willing to help him in finding a job, a position. He started talking to me about how I can help him figure out if he needed different resources or support systems, if I can help him in that endeavor. And I asked him, where did he get all this information, or what made him think about all these things? And he said, well, this is part of, I guess, a requirement in which now that I am now going to become a civilian, that I'm going through this workshop. So all that is to say that something is working within the current structure that exists, and that's a good thing. But I will say this as well on the other end. I opened up with my statement in which I am concerned that regardless, knowing that we still have very high unemployment rates within our veterans, and at the same time, as I've talked to veterans throughout the state of California, and specifically in the 8th Assembly District, Imperial County, and Riverside County, there is a lot of perhaps lack of knowledge, rather, as to what programs do exist. And so, with all that being said, I want to get to the core of my question, which is Operation Welcome Home. What would you say would make this program different from previous programs, and how are we going to make sure that we are successful? In other words, how are you going to measure success? And what does success look like for you? If you can try to answer some of those questions for me, that'd be great.
Okay, our weekly reports of how many people were contacted and the results of those contacts are, to me, very, positive. After the 30 days are up, which is next week, we will start getting the second contact information on how these people are doing. Did you find a job yet? Did you get onto unemployment? Are you signed up for your GI Bill benefits? Are you signed up for health care? We'll be able to track that. At 60 days, we'll be even have more information to be able to share with you on how these people are doing. At 180 days, we'll have the whole package of exactly how their first 6 months out of the service is going for them. And you said, how does this compare to other programs? There was no other program, okay? As I said, they went through the TAP class. Sometimes they paid attention, sometimes they didn't. We gave them their discharge and they walked out. Our program at that time was have events and try to attract them to come so we could talk to them. That was the only program that I'm aware of. I was a county veteran service officer before this job here in Yolo County, and I'm sitting there trying to help veterans, but these kids are coming home and they're getting off the plane and coming home to their home in Woodland, Davis, West Sac. I don't know they're there. So now we don't have that problem. We have people, and we had DVOPs and leavers there too, who didn't know these kids were coming home. So they had to sit and wait for them to come. Now we have information. Dennis?
Sure. Please.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, esteemed members of the both joint committee. My name is Dennis Petrie. I'm the Deputy Director for Workforce Services Branch of the Employment Development Department. Just to build upon my friend Ted's comments, in 2005, the administration embarked upon an unprecedented collaboration as it pertained to recently separated vets. We embarked upon what is now known as Honor a Hero, Hire a Vet. And this was a series of job fairs conducted throughout the state, about 10 that are done annually. And through this process, the Employment Development Department and the California Department of Veterans Affairs, as well as the Department of Industrial Relations, the Labor and Workforce Development Agency, the California Community Colleges Chancellor's Office, and a number of other state agencies that have local delivery systems came together to provide a forum by which veterans could come in and engage directly with employers, as well as come in contact with information about other resources that are available to them as a result of their service. And what we found through that is we needed to reach out to veterans. And I think the biggest challenge that the agencies in California have had as it pertains to veterans is actually finding them, their home, and having a contact name, address, phone number, and email. And we used a data set that comes to the state from the Department of Defense, and we did a direct mail campaign to these veterans based upon the data from the DoD database. And what we found, Mr. Chair and members, is that that information was outdated. A lot of veterans complete different forms that fed this database on their way into the military, but not necessarily on their way out. So we did not have real-time data. Through that experience, we realized that a critical component to our success is to be able to find the veterans. And that was, and in response to that, the California Department of Veterans Affairs and the EDD worked collaboratively together to create the Veteran Reintegration Form and utilize the completion of that form in the Transitional Assistance Program classes. What Ted is referring to now, Mr. Chair and members, is the fact that now we have a new element. This is a new element to the existing TAP program, which is to have these men and women complete this form and return this form to us that has real-time and current data as to where they are going to live and reside upon their return to California. It is the linchpin of this effort on Operation Welcome Home that will not only improve the existing performance of traditional programs as well as support the success and the achievement of Operation Welcome Home. This is a brand new element to traditional programs that is key to our ability now to find these veterans and reach out to them. So the 325 additional CalVet Corps members that are being hired at EDD now have a database that provides them the information so that they can call these veterans, email these veterans, to go to Mr. Cook's question, utilizing existing technology and advancing technology to reach out to these individuals, to inform them that we are here to serve them, the programs and benefits and the services that are available to them, and you have direct or immediate dialogue with these individuals. And if employment, if the one-stop environment that EDD participates in with our local Workforce Investment Act partners that I know all of you are familiar with in the one-stops, if the services that they need move beyond what is available in the one-stops, that's where these CalVet Corps members, using the data that Ted referenced in that booklet, to refer them to services in their existing community that can help to support them and provide them the access, Chairman Perez, that you were talking about. So I'm going to tell you, utilizing new technology and creating programmatic new service delivery and programmatic service models is what Operation Welcome Home is all about.
Well, thank you for all that. I guess my follow-up question then, with that being said, is what are the different documentation tools that you're using, and how is that going to get reported back to the legislature?
We have I can only share a screenshot with you. That's our questions that we ask. They're filled out, reported back to the IT section in CDVA, generates a report every week, and we've only been doing this for 1 month, so we don't even have the 30-day results yet. We will compile a report and report back to EDD and CDVA, the Senate and the Assembly, every time we have a reporting period that we figure has meaningful information. I'd say we need about 2 or 3 months of reports to get the 30 and the 60-day reports back, and we will definitely have a comprehensive report about our findings with results. The results in some of these areas are going to be fairly easy to document with employment, if they got a job, if they got unemployment insurance, if they went to a county veteran service officer and filed a claim. This is the type of information we can document and share with you. if they went to some mental health clinic or, HIPAA-type activities, we probably won't be able to share that as readily as we will the other stuff.
Do you anticipate reporting, once every 6 months, once every year?
I would say quarterly, in my
Quarterly?
opinion. I want a weekly report myself, but,
Realistically, in order to have data, we think we could probably do it on a quarterly basis, but since this is just ramping up, we need to see what we have on the first quarter. We could share it with the committees, but we have to see how that data comes in as we are ramping this program up. So to say whether or not we can do it quarterly, semi-annually, or what, I don't want to promise something that may not have much information on it yet.
Something to consider, unless you already are doing this. If you look at the white paper on page 21, and earlier it was discussed on the concern of outreach and making sure that folks know, our veterans know, that these services exist. To my understanding, on page 21, we have a chart in which we have 9 programs there. Those 9 programs, it's my understanding that program number 1, local veteran employment, number 3, Veterans Employment Related Assistance Program, number 4, Temporary Assistance Program, and number 6, Honorary Hero Hire Vet Job Resource Fair, does outreach. So I guess my question is, to what degree do we integrate those programs with Operation Welcome Home, knowing that these programs are part of the entire $56 million that exists? And so obviously we're working with limited resources, so I'm trying to get a feel as to how you're coordinating this.
I'll take a shot at it, and I'm sure Ted will jump in and correct me if needed be. It's okay. At every one of the events that we do, during the TAP programs, when we do the Honorary Hero Hire a Vet, even our department has been hosting town hall meetings, what we call all-hands meetings. We pass out the reintegration forms that are in the back of the book that are passed out to every one of the members, or every one of the veterans that we come in contact with. We have those forms available online. So and this is one of the measurements that we do have, that we track, is how many of these forms are entered into our database. So that is one of the measurable elements that we have, is how effective are we in getting that outreach if we see a continued uptick on the number of those reintegration forms that we get. So we'll be able to track that.
I think one of the things that this will do is make those outreach events more effective. When you have a job fair or Hire a Hero, Hire a Vet, we have a database now that we can advertise that to. We have veterans' names and addresses in a certain area. I can pull up L.A. I got everybody in L.A. We're having a job fair there. Bam. I send them an email and say, job fair, go see it. Prior to this, I think we were sort of relying on local media, newspapers, radio, TV. Now we have direct access to these people. And we use that right now when we have somebody who wants to hire veterans in the Bay Area on green technology. We shoot an email to my Bay Area veterans in our database, and they get the message. So it's going to make all these, it's going to put these events on steroids too, because it's going to give them a built-in notification system with our veteran population.
Additionally, that does not mean that we won't be using the traditional media. We are, for example, on one of our, on the Honorary Hero Hire a Vet, they do reach out through mails and advertising in our all-hands meetings that we have. We try to partner with local media. We've got one coming up in Reading, for example, and we're partnering with the Reading Record Searchlight to help co-sponsor this for us. We give them a little, logo on our flyers and information, and they give us free ad space and help us get the word out. So we are partnering with local media as well as doing the new email systems.
This is my last question. I know that others have questions as well, and I want to make sure we share the dais here when it comes to making sure they address their questions and concerns to you. Have you decided on what a goal is going to be for our veterans when it comes to unemployment? Earlier I mentioned we're at 15.2% unemployment for our veterans that are coming from Iraq or Afghanistan. Have you decided within a year or 2 years what that unemployment rate is going to look like in the future, or what your goal is going to be like, a certain percentage that you'd like to decrease that unemployment? Just want to figure out what your thoughts are on that.
Well, my thought would be I at least want to be at the state average in a year. I don't like veterans being unemployed more than non-veterans. They paid the price. They took themselves out of society, and they should be at least the same as the rest of them. I personally, and we'd have to talk about this as an agency and co-agency partners, but I would like to see us at least at the state level very soon.
I also just want to state out loud and encourage you as you're moving forward and you're documenting and measuring for success, that you also use the self-assessment for Veterans Workforce Report Card, because I think that will allow you also to think through what maybe the weaknesses are, the challenges you face, and quite frankly, at the end of the day, to reflect and be honest with oneself. It's not to be punitive, but rather it's to improve and to refine and to make things better. And so I know that's in the white paper, and I definitely look forward to hearing more from you as we move forward with Operation Welcome Home. I know that our chairman is back. Before I turn it over to the chairman, I'd like to ask Mr. Gilmore to provide some comments or questions. And with that being said, I turn it over to Mr. Cook.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple of questions in testimony, and I'll direct this question to you, Mr. Petrie. You mentioned, I think it was Mr. Puntillo, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
You mentioned that we have 24 sites in the state that we discharge our veterans from, correct?
Yes, sir.
And Mr. Petrie, you mentioned that we have really a difficult time in tracking or maintaining accurate information of our veterans, where they're going to live and such. At these 24 sites that we're discharging our veterans from, is there a mechanism in place, or should there be a mechanism in place, that we have a form that the vets, when they're separating, I mean, they're filling out all types of forms, do we have anyone there from EDD or any form there that requires the veteran, before they get their DD-214 or before they leave before they separate there, that they fill out a form stating that where they can be contacted in the future? First question.
Thank you, Member Gilmore. We do team up with the California Department of Veterans Affairs to attend these events where military service personnel, men and women, are being discharged. The ability of the state at this particular juncture to mandate that the veteran or soon-to-be veteran complete the form is lacking. We do not have the authority to mandate, compel the individual to complete the reintegration form. We do our very best salesperson job, both in the TAP classes and at these discharge events, to inform these men and women as to what the form is, what we use it, why we use the form, and how beneficial it will be to them to complete and return the form. However, it is personal data that is their choice to complete or not. At this particular juncture, though, Mr. Gilmore, I'm happy to report that in the TAP classes, we are achieving a 95% completion rate on these forms now.
Very good. And then secondly, do you think the local veteran employment representatives could increase their veteran outreach with existing funding?
Yes, Member Gilmore, they can. And to both Chairman Cook and Chairman Perez's question as it pertains to sustainability, the EDD is presently working with the Department of Labor, Veteran Employment and Training Services, who funds the Jobs for Veterans Act, which gives me the DVOPs and the LVERs and the TAP classes, to modify our grant program so that we can sustain this and allow this continued outreach to take place in this new model. Well, I'm sorry, Chairman Cook, Disabled Veteran Employment Program, DVOPs. Oh, Opportunity Program.
Assemblywoman Sedania has a... Oh, you have another one? Or?
Just real quickly, what kind of outreach are we doing there?
The outreach at this particular point is, as we get the data, If it has a telephone number, there is a call that is made immediately to the individual. If there is a telephone number and an email address, then these individuals get the telephone call and an email from us. If the only thing that exists on the form is an address, we send a letter first to try to, number one, make sure the address was accurate. And the outreach efforts are going to these discharge events, the yellow ribbon events, the TAP classes, any particular gathering of military personnel, whether it's the VFW or Vietnam veterans groups. The outreach is to actually get out there in the community, go to these particular groups, and market these programs and these services.
Assemblywoman Sedania.
I'm wondering if we have a CVSO representative at the hearing today.
We did, I thought.
Do we have?
Pete, can you
Pete
address
Conate.
that?
Well, and the reason I'm asking is as we go through this and you describe much of the opportunity or much of the outreach and activities that you're doing and the amount of money we're spending on doing this, it occurs to me that we have 54 CVSO's offices that in my time here we have never fully funded. Now we're looking at a very impressive amount of money going into many new ventures and programs and recruiting volunteers and others. Can we direct some of these funds to our existing CVSO operations, people who have experience, people who are established, people who have ties to the community and the veterans that live there? Why in the world are we creating a whole new range of programs and not investing in something that we know we have invested in for so long? Why are we not putting some of those funds into CVSOs? And before you answer that, Mr. Conady, I know I'm putting you on the spot here, but I'm curious, do some of what the activities being discussed here sound like what CVSOs are currently struggling to do with funds that aren't adequate?
Thank you very much, Assemblywoman Saldana, for that question. Pete Conate, representing the California Association of County Veteran Service Officers. And we are in full support of Operation Welcome Home. However, our concern is that because the counties are budgets are under such stress, we are not a mandated program. We are a program, we like to call it, we're a moral program and something that the state should do, but we have never been mandated, even though some counties started in 1922 with county veteran service officers, and most of them started after World War II. And our concern is that as we identify these our returning servicemen and women who certainly deserve everything we can do for them, and we want to do everything possible for them. But our concern is that the constraints on funding will not allow us to do this in a timely manner. At least 10 years ago, the legislature said we're going to try and get CVSO state funding up to $5 million, which at that time would have been 50% of the cost of CVSO offices. The funding never rose above $2.6 million from the state. 50% of the CVSO statewide budgets now is $11 million. So the situation has gotten worse, and the strain is on the counties. I'm sure that people from EDD will testify, but my understanding is that because this is money from the Federal Department of Labor, that we cannot use it for CVSO funding, but we'd certainly like to find a way that some of those funds could be used for CVSOs as possible, or that the state would authorize more funding for CVSOs. We have heard reports of 3 counties, large counties, who are considering closing their CVSO office totally. And those counties are Sonoma, Sacramento, and San Mateo. And we're talking about an awful lot of veterans in those counties. So the situation is getting critical, and we would urge the legislature to act on increased funding for county veteran service officers.
So we're looking at closing existing programs, but we're ramping up other programs, and there's tremendous crossover with these two programs, just to summarize.
That would be a correct interpretation.
And some of these are discretionary, or they're referred to as governor's discretionary funds, so I don't know that they are mandated to. I mean, I'm just looking at this sheet here, and there are funds that were not allocated at all the prior year. The current year they've gone up to as much as $5 million, actually $12 million. Have you seen this, what I'm referring to? This?
No, I have not seen that document, and I'm not that familiar with the funding, so.
Thank you. I just really wanted to emphasize that I think we have been asking for $5 million for our existing CVSOs since I was first elected 5 years ago. And we've been having those bills vetoed by the governor's office. And now he's come up with 10 times that amount. And nothing is going to an existing program that has done a very good job of providing services to our veterans. So I know you've been trying to answer the question.
That's a very good question, Member Saldana, and it drives many of us who administer these programs crazy and keeps us up late at night. The programs and the funding that is listed in the spreadsheet that you're referring to tends all to be Department of Labor associated funding. The Operation Welcome Home initiative is being funded with UI, unemployment insurance, admin dollars, and America Recovery and Reinvestment Act, Wagner-Pizer Job Services dollars. These are programs that are legislatively created by Congress and are very prescribed as to who can deliver the services and what the allowable services are. Presently, the federal law prescribes that all employment services, Wagner-Pizer Act-funded programs are delivered by merit-based state staff. And then, of course, the UI admin dollars need to support unemployment insurance activities and be conducted once again by state merit unemployment insurance staff. When you do the unemployment insurance activities, there are a number of data assets that are protected, and the laws restrict how these dollars can be used. The most flexible funding sources, Member Saldana, as you indicated, would be the Workforce Investment Act dollars. However, I don't want to mislead anybody that those dollars have very prescribed and legislatively mandated allowable activities that are and must be allowable, and they must serve Workforce Investment Act enrolled clients. It has to benefit the Workforce Investment Act client. There is an opportunity to utilize these funds to be as effective as we possibly can, and through the solicitation process that EDD conducts on the Workforce Investment Act discretionary funds, there is nothing in those solicitations that would preclude a county office of Veteran Service Organization from submitting a proposal and being competitively scored. All WIA dollars are required to be competitively granted.
Thank you. Ms. Yamada?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members, and all of you who came to testify today. I want to first apologize in advance that it is rare that I would leave a hearing early, but I do have 2 commitments in my district that I'm going to have to move on to shortly. But I did want to say a couple of things. First, I know that Chairman Perez asked, what was different about now than before. And if I know that Deputy Secretary Puntillo may not want me to call this out, but since he is a constituent of mine and was our Yolo County Veteran Services officer under partly my watch on the Board of Supervisors, I'd just like to say that if you have not spent any time with Mr. Puntillo, you know that he truly is the Energizer Bunny, and he's up and down the state, and I know Mr. Tremblay and all the rest of the staff are working hard, but there's a chemistry there now that I think is in place that gives me great hope for the future, that I have no doubt that continuing in this way, we're going to reach a lot more veterans than we have in the past. So I wanted to give that little commercial plug. But the other question I think I had, and certainly thanks to Assemblymember Saldana for continuing to raise the specific issues for women veterans, I wanted to ask, of those percentage requests for mental health that you alluded to, 10%, I believe. Were there statistics on how many of those were men and women? As you said, you don't ask that question on the form, which I find interesting in itself. But, I'm not sure whether there's a debate about whether or not you would ask what someone's gender is. But were there numbers in that 10% that were
No,
women?
we made a decision early on to stay away from gender for specific reasons.
Okay.
Privacy and things like that.
But of the 10% that you mentioned that you heard from that were asking for mental support, mental health service support, was there any kind of a wild figure that you had that would indicate how many of them
Out of
were
the 38, we heard anecdotally there was about 10 of them were females, and it was mostly based around PTSD and military sexual trauma.
Well, certainly as we go forward in this discussion and increasing services, it's almost like the chicken and the egg that there may be more women out there who are in need of these services, but because they may feel for a variety of reasons that the services don't exist, they may not be asking. And so we'll just kind of continue to push that discussion forward. I know, thanks to the committee for supporting our resolution recognizing women veterans next month, and hope that all of you will be able to attend and support that on the Assembly floor. One or two other questions, I guess, about the funding for county veteran services officers. I know that in Yolo County, when you served, Ted, that you actually brought in more money to the county than your entire operation cost. And in other words, the veteran services officers are there with certain core funding, but because of the federal benefits and the VA benefits and all the ancillary services that you were able to bring to the veterans, you actually ended up bringing more dollars into the county. Is there any tracking of that going on statewide that we might be able to justify?
Yes, we have a report on that, and it shows it's almost a 7-to-1 turnaround on investment of the money that we spend in a county veteran service office to the hundreds of millions of dollars that are brought in through federal benefits. The VA in California spends $8 billion a year on veterans, $3.4 billion on compensation and pension payments, which are tax-free federal dollars to our veterans. And that's discretionary income that they spend in their communities and helps make their life a little better. So it's a big number.
Well, thank you. Let's keep making that commercial to the state and to the counties. Thanks.
If I can add one point on that issue, this is something that it is important throughout our agency. The Secretary just recently, last week I believe it was, sent a letter out, or may have been 2 weeks ago, sent a letter out to county supervisors around the state spelling out that very point. And we have heard from some of the county veteran service officers that for the first time they've been called in or had their county supervisors coming into their office asking them about this information. So it is something that we're really trying to stress.
Well, I think that's a very, very good point that you raised. Mr. Petrie also talked about that, about getting that word out, that sometimes you have to prompt the counties to go after that money. Any instructional material on how to capture these funds, I think, that can be passed on to the counties and CSAC and other agencies. I'm trying everything I can. I'm running a bill to try and get some revenue for county veteran service officers, and because I believe in what they do, but I think that's very encouraging, some of the things we heard here. So, any other questions before we move on to? Yes, sir.
If I may, Mr. Petrie, in your estimation, do the county veteran service officers, do they work really close with EDD to attain the benefits for the vets in your estimation?
Yes, Member Gilmore, there is a very strong working relationship between the EDD staff and the County Office of Veteran Services. Our focus tends to be primarily employment and employment services. We do see a large number of veterans who come to us who need ancillary issues attended to in order to put them on a pathway to employability. If it was not for our ability to refer these men and women to the County Office of Veteran Services for a number of services and referrals that we're unable to provide, we would not have the success we have, although the success we have is not good enough, in my estimation, and I know in all of yours. If it wasn't for this strong working relationship of referrals and cross-referrals, we would not be able to marshal a broad array of services around the unique needs of individual veterans.
Any other questions?
I have a slightly different take on that. And representing the county veteran service officers who are in support of Mr. Gilmore's efforts to emulate the Texas model. If you look at the chart I passed out, you'll see that California has more veterans in Texas or Florida, but brings in less in federal payments. And this is taken directly from the Department of Veterans Affairs. And I'm not saying EDD are bad people. It's we have to break down the silos that have been created around these organizations. You know, it's only recently that we've realized that CDVA and the county veterans service organizations are working so much closer together than they have in the past. And that was a report was done several years ago, mandated by the legislature, which basically says that the CVSOs are the action arms for CDVA. And the reason Texas and Florida bring in more funding than we do is because they have an extensive CVSO system and a well-funded CVSO system. So one of the things we have to do is break down the silos and get EDD. EDD is located with a whole lot of employment services in EDD offices. The CVSOs are located in county offices where they are the hub of veteran services in the county. They connect the veteran service organizations, they connect county services, mental health, courts, PTSD, and so what we really need to do is get EDD more focused on reaching out and working with the county veteran service officers.
I want to give EDD the last word on this, and it's been, I think, a great hearing that's been going on, but I don't know if you have more to add, and Ms. Olander, I don't know.
Chairman Cook, I couldn't agree more with the comments of my colleague from Yolo County Office of Veteran Services. I'm not going to get a dissertation on the one-stop career center system. We can save that for another hearing. I think if I was to make a recommendation today, I concur that in one-stops, and there is a comprehensive one-stop in every local workforce investment area, if not more one-stops in every local workforce investment area, that yes, are co-located with other service delivery partners. If the County Office of Veteran Services would like to co-locate with this large cadre of service providers that are already existing in one-stops, I think the issue that was articulated would be effectively attended to. If we didn't have to refer folks out of the one-stop to service delivery elsewhere and then get referred back when the services are complete, we would be able to do a much more effective job in the area of marshaling a large array of services immediately around the unique needs of any particular veteran.
Good. I want to thank you. I'm not going to ask whether the government is going to pay for that to incur that cost so it doesn't go on the counties, but the thought has crossed my mind, so you might hear more about that. I'm sorry, I do want to give you an opportunity to speak here. Ms. Yamada will never forgive me if you don't say something.
Okay.
That's true, but I do want to hear you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members. It's an honor for me to be here today. It's the first opportunity I've had, and I want to apologize to those who I have my back to. My name is Circe Olander, and I am the Director of AmeriCorps at California Volunteers. And I believe that at the last meeting you had here, you got a briefing on California Volunteers and what AmeriCorps is, so I won't go into that level of detail. I understand that you asked me here today to talk a little bit about the AmeriCorps component of Operation Welcome Home, and I have to tell you how excited I am to be able to do so. Ted talked about co-working across agencies, and this fresh component of AmeriCorps, while it brings up the rear of the initiative, it is not due to lack of interest, but to the funding stream. So it's the timing of how AmeriCorps funding comes into California, and we worked together to add AmeriCorps to this design and submitted an application at the end of January to our federal agency, the Corporation for National and Community Service. Those announcements will be made on May 28th, but we do have a safety net. If it doesn't get funded at the national competition, it will be funded at the state level with our formula dollars that we oversee. It is through the clarification process, so our grant award is almost $570,000 to support 81 part-time AmeriCorps members. And I would like to take a moment and make a distinction between a volunteer and an AmeriCorps member. The AmeriCorps member is part of the CalVet Corps, and it comes alongside the EDD state worker member. So these two individuals have in common that they receive a payment. An AmeriCorps member receives a living allowance, very modest living allowance, for the service they provide. So we thought it appropriate to add national service to this model because the veterans served us, we want to serve them. So this is national service, and these 900-hour positions will be placed in teams at the CVSOs. I'm not new to AmeriCorps, but I'm new to the veteran world, so I'm learning all these acronyms. But they will come alongside to help reduce the burden of the CVSOs to be able to serve veterans more efficiently and increase capacity. Shall I stop there and you can ask some questions?
Well, I want to see if the panel has any questions. I am glad that you gave us this, and I share your concern about acronyms, but this sounds like something very, very important. And our chair, I think he has some questions.
Just real quick regarding the volunteers, I know that are they getting deployed to communities now as we speak?
Well, I want to make a distinction. An AmeriCorps member is different than a volunteer. We do have a plan for Californians to come and volunteer in this initiative, but the AmeriCorps members were in the implementation phase, so because we know we will be supporting this program, it just depends which pot of funding it will come from. I'm working with CDVA to develop the recruitment strategy. We have a position description, and the members will be recruited locally, so we're trying to get the criteria or the characteristics of a AmeriCorps member in this model. Unlike EDD, it could be a veteran, but we really want to keep it within the veteran circle, so it could be someone with an association to the military, a spouse, a family member, an extended relative, but someone that has that compassion to serve a vet and really understands the existing infrastructure of resources in the community. So to answer your question, we will be recruiting this summer. If the program is funded in this national competition, we'll have the grant award by July 1, and we can go into contract and launch the program by August. If it comes out of our formula pot, we will most likely get the grant award a month later, August 1st, so we'd be launching about September. But in the meantime, we will recruit and screen all of the candidates, so we will have all 81 selected and ready to go so that when the program launches, they'll be.
So when is the program supposed to begin and end?
Well, it's a 12-month program, so if it starts August 1st, it will go till July 30th. It's a 3-year grant that's continued annually for the 2 subsequent years. So it's over a 3-year period, and each year 81 members get launched. A member can serve up to 2 years, so we'll have turnover, we'll have opportunities for other folks to come in and become the Cal Vet Corps AmeriCorps member.
So what will happen with those volunteers after those 3 years?
The AmeriCorps members themselves, this program is modeled, it's a compilation of a variety of service programs. So a piece they stole from the military is the thought of a GI Bill. So upon successful completion of service, an AmeriCorps member earns an education award. So they could take that education voucher and pay towards student loans or towards the cost of an education. So they will move on, use their Ed Award.
There's no consideration or thought as to continuing this program or look for more funding?
Well, AmeriCorps, as I mentioned, is a 3-year grant, and it's renewed through recompetition every 3 years. So as the 3rd year comes to a close, we would go through the same process. Our grants are also competitive, so it goes through a state grant-making process and then the federal grant-making process.
Are there any thoughts as to how the state legislature can better support your efforts, or how we could be more effective in the delivery?
Of the AmeriCorps component or of Operation Welcome Home?
Well, your effort with Operation Welcome Home.
Well, AmeriCorps funding is a partnership, a public-private partnership, so it's not 100% supporting the efforts of a community when we put AmeriCorps members into a community. This grant, in its first 3 years, will require a 24% match, so we could always use some funds to help that effort. But I would turn it over to my colleagues to talk more broadly about the whole program design. This is a component of it.
Okay.
Member Sidani. All right. Do you have a question or?
I'm trying to match up the numbers with the concept paper that I have here, and you said that this is a 3-year grant program for the AmeriCorps members.
No, it's to CDVA. The legal applicant gets an award for up to 3 years, and it will be renewed annually for years 2 and 3.
But these are the AmeriCorps members you're referring
The
to?
grant award supports service positions, and that would be called an AmeriCorps member. So the funding allows an organization to recruit, train, supervise, and otherwise support AmeriCorps positions. So in this specific request, we asked for 40.5 MSY, which are member service years. It's the equivalent of an FTE. And we decided, After 4 months of implementing this design, we decided to change it. We had a split model of full-time and part-time members, and we thought it wise and more economical to cover the state by making them all part-time members so that we could have greater reach in the counties that we're serving.
Well, and just one more thing, and this is more overall, one mention of how to evaluate success and outcomes was that the unemployment rate of the people that are being serviced would be average to the state level as opposed to greater than what we're currently seeing. I'm just wondering, this isn't for you specifically, but for all the people that are presenting today, what specific and measurable outcomes will be used to evaluate the effectiveness of what is being proposed through this Welcome Home program? What are the specific measurable outcomes that you have determined you want to see? One that what I heard was the unemployment rate being simply even to the population at large. But what are the goals that will be measured so that you know that you are succeeding in investing almost $60 million in this new program?
Well, 60 million? I think it's
Well, I'm looking at
20.
the current year, the funding made available. It was 56, unless I'm...
Well, the several measurable things that we will have to report are the employment rate for veterans, which is going to be what it's going to be. Hopefully, it'll be down to the state average at the end of this project. The other thing that's very measurable is the veterans' compensation and pension participation rate that this committee is sort of focused on. When we took over in 08, it was 11.07. Right now, it's in the mid-13s, and within a year and a half, we want to be at the national average.
I'm sorry, what are those numbers, 11 and 13?
11.07 is the participation rate in 2008. It's the number of veterans who are accessing benefits through the VA in compensation and pension.
Isn't that what CVSOs do, though?
Right.
Okay, but you're lumping it in with your program as a measure of success.
Well, the CVSOs are a major part of this in that we refer these veterans when they first get out to the CVSO, which is the best time to get access to your benefits when they first get out. You have that golden year, the year after you get out, anything that sort of goes wrong with you, it's a presumptive condition and automatically service-connected. So you really want to get them to the specialist, the CVSO, within that first year to file a claim, to talk about hearing loss, to talk about PTSD. I'd say those are the two basic measurable things that happen every year. The other things we're looking for is a reduction in suicide rate, divorce rate, how we're going to track that we're still working on that. Increased participation in school education, we can track that. These are all the indicators that we're going to be looking for in California to make sure that we are successful, or to show you that we weren't successful. But I think most of these indicators will be looking better after this initiative.
Additionally, Dennis can correct me if I'm wrong, also the participation in unemployment insurance benefits for those veterans who are coming back during their first year, making sure that during your first year back, you automatically qualify for that. And Dennis maybe can expand on it, but that's another measurable that we would be looking at specifically related to this Operation Welcome Home and the EDD employees.
Ms. Member Saldana, the unemployment insurance compensation for veterans is paid from the federal government. It does not draw upon the UI Trust Fund here in California. In 2009, the last year that I have complete data, indicates that the California economy saw the infusion of $136 million as a result of unemployment insurance claims completed and received by veterans. So we would gauge that, we would look at that in whatever increase or lack thereof as a measure of our success, specifically because it puts money in the pocket of the veteran when they need it most, but in addition, it creates a stimulus effect in our local economies. So we would be measuring the increase or lack thereof, but we fully expect that it will be an increase in net receipt to the state of California in unemployment insurance compensation, federal unemployment insurance compensation. And I think that there are some process measures as well, Member Saldana, that we will be looking at. How many veterans contacted? As we've explained, the data that we have indicates that anywhere between 25 and 30,000 service personnel separate and either make their home in California or return to California. So by checking against the number of veterans that we get integration forms from, and we're looking at contact rates, referral rates, there's a number of process measures that we're using internally to determine the efficacy of this particular program and investment.
Chairman Perez?
Yes, I have a couple of thoughts. To my understanding, we have 9 programs to serve our veterans. This is a question for anyone here. And I guess I'm wondering, are they operating in silos or is there coordination? And if there's coordination, what does that look like? And if there isn't coordination, why not? And is there a will to share resources? Right. Once again, we're going back to the $56 million that these programs have been allocated. And so at the end of the day, what we don't want is duplication, we don't want redundancy, and we don't want waste. Right? So what are you doing to make sure that these programs are not operating in silos and that there is coordination and that we are efficient with our limited resources?
Member Chairman Perez, as far as we are able to break down silos, we absolutely will be breaking down the silos. I have been working with a number of legislative staff that serve this committee, both committees, to identify administrative hurdles and barriers that keep the silos intact and work to determine at what legislative level the intervention needs to take place. We have issues associated with confidential data and the ability for even state entities or quasi-governmental entities to share data among themselves, which works to maintain silos. We have a number of competing various eligibility requirements that are associated with the funding streams or legislation that created the funding streams. We are working at the state level to, again, identify administrative barriers that prohibit our ability to break down these silos, and then we'll be making recommendations for legislative response that can assist us in that endeavor, as well as the ongoing weekly coordination meetings that take place presently between the Employment Development Department and the California Department of Veterans Affairs, as well as CalVols, to break down and integrate our staffing and our staffing resources. And in the training apparatus for the 300-plus CalVet Corps members that EDD is hiring, the curriculum of training is jointly developed between the California Department of Veterans Affairs and the Employment Development Department, and it is jointly delivered. This effort that began over 5 years ago and continues to today will continue with great zeal and vigorous and spirited participation. We recognize that these men and women put on a uniform and put their lives in harm's way to protect us. They have served this country, and now it is our obligation to provide service to them, and we are committed to that mission.
Well, I would just add that I think as a measurement of success, right, at least one measurement is to add in your criteria the degree in which these programs are actually working together or not. that's something that I think that's critical here. Obviously, at a time that we are in here with the economy as it is and the resources that you are receiving, we want to maximize those resources and as well relieve ourselves of redundancy as much as possible. And we don't want duplication. I know that you're working hard, but at the same time, I know that we can refine and make things a little better. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I was just going to point out, Mr. Chairman, that one of the things we should always keep in mind is that county veterans service officers are government employees. They are local county government employees. And the Veterans Administration and the state CDVA have recognized that there is a government-to-government-to-government relationship. So I think there may be some areas where we could break down these barriers, these silos, and share information if everybody keeps in mind that local governments are an arm of state governments and also work with the federal government. CVSOs have extraordinary ability to access Veterans Administration information on behalf of veterans. So possibly there is areas where EDD and CVSOs can work more closely together and share information.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chair, if I may add and echo what has been said, to give a practical example of how some of those silos have broken down, the initial, as Deputy Secretary Puntillo pointed out, in the past, the TAP program was kind of an isolated program working on its own over in the bases run by EDD, and ours was over separate. We now are in and integrated into that process. We have the forms in that process. So that's one of the areas. It's a small area, it's one of the areas, but that's a practical example of where we've broken through the silos of the departments. And as our Undersecretary pointed out, we need to continually reevaluate these things and look at where else we can break down or bridge those silos and continue that going, because it is a challenge. But we are committed to doing that.
I look forward to the first report that comes out, and I'm hoping that you'll address this element as well within the report. And at the same time, I think it'd be important that you provide us recommendations as to what you think the legislature should do to better support your efforts. A quick question for yourself, Mr. Petrie, if I may. I understand that you're going to be receiving for Operation Welcome Home one-time unemployment funds. And so I guess my question is, how do you plan to sustain the program after December 31st, 2010?
Well, we are preparing presently, as I indicated earlier, Mr. Chair, we are presently and actively engaged in modifying our DOL VETS grant with the Federal Department of Labor to incorporate these innovative elements of Operation Welcome Home that presently are not allowed within the existing parameters of the grant. So we're working to modify that grant so that those dollars can be spent on the activities that presently are not allowed. We intend to lobby the federal government for additional resources. As my good friend Mr. Puntillo has indicated, we believe in this program, and we're willing to lock arms and go to the respective committees in the Congress, as well as to the Department of Labor, and lobby for additional resources that will allow us to maintain this. This is a cutting-edge innovation, one that we believe holds great promise, and one that we believe it is our duty and obligation to secure additional resources. And if we're not successful in Washington, D.C., then Mr. Chairman Cook and Mr. Chairman Perez, we may be back before your respective committees, giving you an indication on what our financial need would be to continue sustainability of this effort.
I can appreciate that. My concern is that the war is not over. And so this program, let's say it moves forward for 3 years, We don't know when this war is going to get over or it's going to finish. We don't know how soon that will take place. And so in the meanwhile, we'll be working with folks that are coming back from war now over the course of these next 3 years. But what happens to those beyond that? Right? And so I definitely also think that as a measurement of success and something for you to report back to the legislature as well is issues pertaining to funding, funding streams, financials. What does that look like for the future? Obviously, federal government dollars, state government dollars, if we have them, that's a great start. But I also want to encourage you to think outside the box, maybe private donations that are out there, maybe nonprofit endowments, foundation world dollars that are out there. Let's think through all that. Let's make sure that this is not a Band-Aid solution, a quick fix for just the meanwhile. I definitely want to make sure that we live up to the honor of our veterans, and the way we can do that is make sure that we have the correct systems and structures in place, financials in place, funding streams in place, so that we can do a really good job with this program.
Thank you.
Okay. Any last comments? Or?
Well, I just want to thank you all for being here. Thank you for presenting. I want to thank the members from the Committee of Jobs, Economic Development, and the Economy for coming here as well. I think this is very critical, very important, and just want to thank you for including me in this hearing. And as well, thank you, Mr. Berryhill, for being here, part of the JETI committee as well.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Cook, can I claim one saved round? Sorry. Answer to your question about the hits, I did get that. On our MySpace ads that we had, we got approximately 3,000 where they actually went to the ad and went to the information we were going to. Facebook, we have 514 friends over the past 2 months, so tell your friends and we'll get them more added to it. We average approximately 2,000.
I don't have any friends. I'm in Sacramento.
We have about 2,000 hits a month on our website. And the last point I would make for yourself, Mr. Gilmore, Mr. Liu, and any other veterans, I passed these out. This is the reintegration form. Fill it out, get it to us. We'll put you on our system. You see what we got. And in answer to the question for Assemblywoman Saldana, we do have a question on here, or a reference on here for a woman veteran to be added to our women's veterans roster, so we can track that element of it as well. If
Good.
they sign in for that, we will have that number.
Okay.
Mr. Petrie, you go to those centers where we EAS out those Marines.
EAS?
Yeah. Well, we're going to sepeRate those Marines.
What does EAS stand for?
They're separating from the
In the
Marine
active
Corps.
service?
You tell those jarheads, fill out the form. End of story.
Hoo-yah.
Well, obviously, this is deteriorating real quick, but I also want to thank the committee. A lot of information. By the way, there's a great book called Re-Engineering Government, written by 2 Democrats, I might add, which really talks a lot about integrating government and eliminating the functional silos, et cetera, et cetera. So the college professor in me has to mention that. We got a long ways to go, but a lot of these issues are certainly germane, and we're going to continue this discussion. I appreciate everyone's patience, and without any further comments, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.